Samad, stop it.
I'm in my prayers, sir.
Get up.
Sir, if I'm able to reconcile dialectical materialism and Allah, isn't that my business? Why do you not trust me, sir? You know I'm a member of the party. My son is in the cultural exchange in Moscow, sir. Do you think I would compromise my son?
I said get up. See how deep the river is.
How, sir?
Walk in it. You don't need that.
Like ice, sir.
I didn't ask for the temperature. Is the bottom mud or stone?
Stone.
Why? I said why? Shut up!
What are you doing?
Recording you, sir!
Write yourself up, because this time your insubordination is going to get you a court-martial.
So will killing your own men, sir!
You are listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. The following podcast contains adult language, adult situations, and spoilers for the movies discussed occur often. You've been warned. Now, take it away, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
Hello and welcome back. It is They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 240. And I'm your host, Lee. Out of commission, become a pillbox. Out of ammo, become a bunker, Russell. And I am joined by my intrepid co-host, Lee. Incredibly civilized, Hardy. How you doing, ma'am?
I wish I was civilized. Jeez. I can eat my food properly, though, like knife and fork. That was the one thing growing up with a dad from England. He had like all the proper etiquette with like knife and fork.
Oh, yeah.
So if I didn't do it properly, it was like, "What are you doing? You're not a slob."
Was he even like a stickler for where the knife and fork were placed next to the plates? Or
that wasn't so bad. He would say what it had to be, but it was mostly just how you held your utensils that really irked him.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a interesting one. It's a bit of a downer of a film, to be quite honest, but I think it's
downer.
I think it's interesting to talk about. And this is a long ago request from Nick Pataccio. He's requested this twice now. He first came like years ago on one of the YouTube versions of one of our films that we did. He's like, "You should check this film out." I was like, "Okay, we'll put that in the master list," and I did. And we didn't get to it for a while because we sort of started our let's start in the 1900s project and go through the decades kind of thing. So that took up a lot of our time. And then he messaged me on Instagram, like you want to check this movie out? Like, he actually had forgotten that he had asked before, I guess. It had been so long.
Or did he? Was he just being very politely reminding you?
Maybe. Could have been that. Could have been that too. But either way, we eventually do get to requests. It just happens that, this podcast is, we do whatever the fuck we want kind of thing. So we will get to your requests. It just, sometimes it might take us a while. That's just the thing. But
you may not listen to us anymore, but we'll get to it.
No, I do know. I can confirm that Nick is, at the very least, he's a member of the Facebook group, and he even messaged me tonight on Instagram saying, "Hope you enjoyed the movie," yada yada yada. So he knows we're doing it. So there we go, Nick. We finally got to it. Sorry it took so long, but I did promise him we'd get it done sometime this summer, and this is literally the last week of the summer, basically. So,
well, summer ends like 2 weeks in September, I think it is, because I'm a summer baby, even though that's arguably not the case. But if you go by calendar date, I'm a summer baby.
Well, either way, we got it done. So we're gonna talk about it tonight. So there you go, Nick. Hope you enjoy the podcast. And he also provided me with like some really good links to like some interviews from both the director and the writer of this. So gave me a bit more insight in what was going on in the movie. So thank you very much, Nick, for that as well. Really helped with the viewing of this and sort of putting my notes together and stuff. So it was pretty good.
Shared them. Jeez. Whatever. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a bad host. You just point out what a bad host I am.
Didn't know what it was about or anything. You just like threw me in there. Just sink or swim moment. I got this though. It's okay.
Okay, cool. So before we get to that, we'll talk about what we watched in the last little while. I'll throw over to you first.
All right. So as I mentioned before, I attempted to watch Father of the Bride. And I watched the first 10 minutes and I got so angry. I turned it off. It was just, I don't know, there were so many, I don't think it aged very well because there were so many comments that were made and there were so many situations where I couldn't do it. I honestly couldn't do it. I don't know what bugged me so much. I think it was the talk about the girl being like anti-marriage and then she's 22 and she's like, he changed my mind. And it just, I don't know, like that irked me. And then the whole idea of being so happy to be a Mrs. when I'm so anti that. It was a really bad movie for me to watch. Like if you know me or anything, those are the movies that I cannot do. Like they're supposed to be these cute family, like romantic movie, whatever's like comedies. And I cannot do it. I cannot do it. I think it's just a lot of archaic traditions that just need to die that are like emphasized in these.
I agree. They do push sort of like traditional quote unquote values. Okay, goofy comedy aside or whatever. I mean, if you're into just being a wife, and being a missus or whatever, that's cool. But like, it shouldn't be the prevalent thing that's promoted in society. I totally agree. Like, it should be the idea that you have your choice.
Yeah.
Of what you want to do when you get married. Even if you want to be fucking married, if you don't want to officially be married, that's another thing. It's very much something that should be left to the past as far as I'm concerned. So I totally agree. Same with like taking the last name. Like I'm super anti it, but I know a lot of my friends were very excited about when they got married to have the husband's last name. That's fine. I can totally respect that. But me personally, I can't fucking stand it. It's just one of those traditions that I absolutely hate. I think it just needs to go away. Like it just needs to be more accepted that it's a conversation with the husband and the wife. Well, I guess in this situation, like a male-female couple, to decide whose last name you're taking. If you want to take the last name, if you want to make up a new last name, if you want to keep your own name, like it's something that should be a normal conversation. It shouldn't be something like an expected thing. Yeah. It shouldn't be, oh, I'm going to marry this person. And then your parents are like, well, she's taking your last name, right? Like that shouldn't be part of the conversation. Like who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck? Yeah.
Like I remember I worked at I'm not going to say where. Anyways, I work somewhere. And I asked all the males if they'd be willing to take the female's last name. And there was a good amount. I think I asked, I can't remember, 10 or 15 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 people. One who said no, because I wouldn't take her, or I wouldn't let her change her last name either. So he was completely anti-changing name in general.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, 3. And then I had 2 others that said yes, I would be willing to. The rest said absolutely not, or tried to make excuses as to why they wouldn't. Like, they avoided the question. Or the fact that they're like, well, I am married and she already took my last name. And I'm like, that's not the question. That is not the question I asked. But yeah, they all were like hard nose. So it just shows you. I know it's something simple, so simple to some people, but it just makes me so angry. So watching this kind of movie, bad idea. I didn't watch it. I watched Flubber instead, and I'm happy I did that.
Okay, so I have one I'll mention. Again, just my continuing journey on, like, hey, anything Shudder throws at me, I'm probably going to watch. I watched this one called Dave Made a Maze from 2017. And I quite like this, and I think you would like this a lot as well.
I need to jump on the whole Shudder thing. I pay for it, and I probably watch like 2 movies a year. Mm-hmm. It's so stupid. I need to give me a list, and I will start watching them.
They've really upped their game. Like, there's so much good stuff on Shudder now. You know, the joke for years was Shudder had 5 movies.
Yeah,
but now they're like dumping like 10 movies every month, like new on us, and it's really pretty fucking good. You know, the quality is, I'd say the quality now is way better than Netflix as far as like new stuff every week or every 2 weeks or whatever. It's generally everything Shudder kind of drops on now is pretty fucking good. This is really good. This is about this sort of like struggling introverted artist living in his apartment. And like his newest project is he's just kind of like locked himself in this apartment. And he's made this cardboard maze. He's made like a cardboard labyrinth. It's like a self-contained cardboard fort almost labyrinth thing. And his girlfriend comes over. His long-suffering girlfriend is like, when is this guy gonna fucking, get his life in order? And he is inside this. And so she's like, are you gonna come out? He's like, I can't come out. I'm stuck in the maze. I'm lost. The size of it is kind of the middle floor space in my room kind of thing. Like, it's not super big, but it's like, it looks big enough to hold one adult human, right? Basically. And so she's like, what are you doing there? And he's like, I'm stuck. And she's like, okay. So she calls over his best friend, this long suffering guy. He's the guy who this will strike with you. The guy who played Warren in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the incel creepy boyfriend guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Plays a totally different character in this, by the way. It's like I was wondering, like, where have I seen this motherfucker? Because he's really good and he's really likable. And I was like, oh wait, he's that total fucking dickbag from Buffy the Vampire Slayer who's like a total shithead and that you just want to see die.
Doesn't die.
Well, he eventually does. He gets his skin pulled off by Willow in like season 7 or some shit. But
yeah, sorry, he does. Yes, Which, but yeah.
But oh man, I gotta rewatch some Buffy. Anyway, so they decide, okay, we're gonna go in and we're gonna come and get you, basically. And they start to realize that even though they can't see inside the maze, he tells them it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Yeah, exactly. And they start to realize he might be telling the truth here. So they invite a bunch of their friends over and some like random people. Like there's these like Finnish tourists that show up. Like it's a horror comedy basically. So there's some random nonsense and stuff going on. They invite like a homeless guy over as well. And there's like this whole party around this fucking fort as they're deciding like, should we go in? And then eventually a bunch of them do go in. And they discovered that, yes, indeed, it's a labyrinth that is fucking way bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And it's deadly.
Is David Bowie at the end?
No, I wish there was a David Bowie, but it's basically like the labyrinth is taken on its own like sentience. Like it's an actual like manifestation of some sort of entity. And so you go inside and reality changes where if you get killed, you don't spurt blood, you spurt like fucking like paper mache, red paper mache or some shit like that. Like it's very interesting the effects they do in this. Like some people get horribly killed in this, and instead of blood, it's like fucking paper mache confetti kind of stuff. And there's some really inventive set pieces in it. It is fucking crazy, but it's so inventive. It's so well done. It's obviously like a really kind of cheap movie, and they make the most of everything they use in it. And I thought it was really fucking good. Like they take a film crew in with them as they're trying to find him and shit. So like they have this like pretentious director of the film crew who wants to get all the footage and do a documentary on him inside his maze and shit. And
That's so cool.
It's really, really fucking enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. So yeah.
I love how they just. Wow, I'll definitely have to watch it.
We should just do it for a date night. Probably that's probably the thing we'll do.
There we go, and we both Shudder, so it's perfect.
Yeah, let's see if Discord will allow me to stream Shudder. That'll be interesting to see.
That's true.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about The Beast of War from 1988. And I don't know about you, Lee, but I think
We got this, man. We got this by the ass.
All right.
Perfect, baby. Perfect.
You ungodly warlock.
Broadcasting from the cursed earth, the Psychosemanticast.
Let us face, without panic, the reality of our time. The fact that atom bombs may someday be dropped on our cities. And let us prepare for survival by understanding the weapon that threatens us.
To have an ignorant, thin-skinned megalomaniac who sends off Twitters at 3 a.m. if somebody angered him.
Neo-Nazis turning up in Washington, D.C. to have a rally saying Heil Trump.
We talk about politics.
I knew I couldn't trust you, corporate greaseballs.
We talk about movies.
You can't come down here and arrest people just because of what they look like. Are you crazy? If that's police harassment.
We talk about political movies.
We're in trouble. The whole world's in trouble. They're all around us. We never knew it. You can only see them with these special glasses.
The Psychosemanticast.
You ungodly warlock.
All right, we have The Beast of War from 1988, also known as The Beast, and we have a trailer.
Ooh. You ungodly warlock.
That wasn't the trailer. I pressed the wrong button.
Konstantin Kovarchenko is a Russian soldier. He's fighting a war he does not believe in.
Put him under the track.
Under a commander he cannot trust. In a machine his enemies call the Beast.
When the old man gets on your back, there's no way to shake him off.
He's torn between following orders.
Take him now, he's a traitor.
No. And following his conscience.
Shut up! This time your insubordination is going to get you a court-martial. Someone killing your own men, sir! Hang that rock!
Columbia Pictures presents The Beast of War.
All right, The Beast of War. This is directed by Kevin Reynolds, who started out with a film that was actually like helped by Steven Spielberg to get off the ground. Like it was a remake of his student film called Fandango, and that had Kevin Costner in it, and it's like some. It's like a coming of age film of like a bunch of friends who are about to be drafted to Vietnam or whatever, and they have like a fucking weekend of fun or whatever the shit to before that. And there was a lot of movies like that back in the day, like in the 70s and 80s, kind of like talking about Vietnam and shit, which kind of fits into this film in certain ways. He also did a bunch of movies people have heard of. Some of them are kind of critical flops. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner. Again, like he worked with Kevin Costner a few times here. He did Waterworld, which... Ooh. And people think Waterworld was a flop. It actually wasn't a flop. It made money.
I enjoyed that movie. I was a kid when I watched it, though. I did enjoy it.
Like, I don't think Waterworld's super great or anything, but like it's more got the reputation of being a flop because it was at the time the most expensive movie ever made or some shit, and it didn't like make billions of dollars. It just made a bit of like a brief profit, like a bit of a profit or whatever, I think. He also made 187, which I think is a Samuel L. Jackson as a teacher in Los Angeles movie kind of thing. And like 187 is like the police code for murder or whatever, I think. Don't quote me on that one. And The Count of Monte Cristo. This is written by William Mastro Simone. Probably.
Simone? Yay? Simone? I don't know.
Yeah, he's a playwright. He's done some writing for movies and TV. This is basically based on his experiences in Vietnam. He wrote a play not Vietnam, Afghanistan. Again, I said Vietnam, which we'll get into. Yeah. But when he was younger, like in his 30s, he decided, I gotta go to Afghanistan and see what the fuck's going on during this conflict between, the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, which is what this is set in. He, by hook or by crook, found his way and got to like Pakistan and then got like shuttled into Afghanistan and actually got hooked up with some Mujahideen guerrillas. Was basically in the middle of the war with these people, and apparently they wanted to use him for some propaganda purposes and stuff, and at some point kind of left him for dead, and he got found by some villagers and saved and came back from this conflict eventually and sort of wrote this
wow
Yeah. So he was actually in this shit. And you kind of think like the Jason Patrick character here is kind of a stand-in for him to a certain extent. Like he wasn't hunting down tanks with an RPG or anything like that, but he did get to see the sort of Afghani culture firsthand and see like not only just the conflicts between the Afghanis and the Russians, but just the internal conflicts between the actual Afghani people as well, kind of things. So, and I think a lot of that actually does really come out in this movie. We have starring here George. I always have trouble trying to pronounce his fucking name. I don't know if some of the Z's are fucking silent or not. I just say George Dunza as Daskell.
Dunza? I don't know either. I had the Italian ones the other time. This one, I got nothing.
Yeah. Jason Patrick is Konstantin Kovalchenko. Stephen Bauer is Kontaj, I guess. Stephen Baldwin, one of the Baldwin brothers in this. Stephen Baldwin as Anthony Golikov. Don Harvey as Kaminsky. Kaber Bedi as Akbar. Eric Avari as Samad. Shavin Jaffrey as Mustafa. Shoshi Marshino as Serena. Yitzhak Nieman as Iskandar, and David Sorrell as Kovalov. And we have a synopsis here. Afghanistan, 1981, and the Soviet Union is locked in a futile and bloody battle with the Mujahideen. Separated from their patrol after a vicious attack of an Afghani village, a T-62 tank engages in a deadly game of cat and mouse with the local Mujahid, led by the Afghan Taj. The tyrannical and increasingly unstable tank commander Daskell pushes the moral boundaries of the tank driver Konstantin Kovalchenko to the limits, with almost dire consequences. Sensing a mutiny, Daskell abandons Kovalchenko to die in the desert at the hands of the Afghans, only to find that he's sealed his own fate. And that's from Kova2 at travel.to on IMDb. The storied synopsis writer of IMDb, Kova2 at travel.to. Sure. But no, that's actually a decent little synopsis. Definitely decent back of the fucking box synopsis if you were like renting this or buying it. Like that kind of works. This is the first time for both of us, and I will throw over to you first. Lee, what are your sort of general thoughts on this one?
I was not expecting this. Like I was telling you before we started. Mm-hmm. I was honestly expecting something that was like funny and ridiculous and everything. So as soon as I saw the website and I saw everything, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm in for a trip. And it was heavy. It was absolutely heavy. Regardless, though, I am happy that I watched it. These are the kind of movies that kind of like open up your eyes to a lot of things that you never really think of or never hear of. Mm-hmm. So definitely glad I watched it, and I did enjoy it. It was a good movie.
Just to put context on people listening here who may have not watched it yet. So, this is one of the many sort of like proxy wars between Cold War powers back in the day, if in Afghanistan. So there was like a communist government that came to power in Afghanistan in like the late 70s, I believe. And the Soviet Union decided to back them. And the problem is that Afghanistan, like 80% of it is just like barren desert that the centralized powers of Afghanistan have no fucking control over. So they were like, okay, we're going to invade Afghanistan and we're going to subjugate the entire countryside. And it didn't work out for them. It lasted 9 years. It expended a lot of lives on both sides. A lot of manpower, a lot of military equipment, a lot of logistics, everything were just like kind of thrown into this.
Money.
And money. And at the end, it kind of became Soviet Union's Vietnam, because really the Soviet Union kind of dissolved shortly after this was kind of resolved. Like you had Gorbachev come into power, who was like putting reforms in and trying to be, trying to make the Soviet Union more westernized, quote unquote, and try to, make peace to a certain extent. And this was kind of like the last kind of big war that exhausted the Soviet Union's power. And so I was really surprised by how fucking serious and deep this movie was. I think the thing here is you go into this and it's 1988. You're expecting Rambo 3, and this movie was kind of buried by the producers in the studios. So this was not released widely. Like Columbia Pictures, who was responsible for this, they released the movie in 2 theaters in New York and Los Angeles, and only ran it for a few weeks, and then it just withered away and died. They just wrote it off, basically. But I really like this. Like it's super fucking serious about what it's talking about. It works as like a psychological kind of war movie. Like you have the push and pull between the tank commander and our sort of deserter here who wants to mutiny, and the stuff he sees happens to like,
and he does too.
Yeah, like this a local like. This movie is very much big on like the evils of imperialism. Like you see the initial attack by the Russian tank, like a bunch of Russian tanks come up to this Afghan village, and yes, you can see that there's Afghanis. They have guns and stuff because they're used to being fucking attacked. Like the history of that country for like thousands of years is invading armies come in and across us or occupy us. Because Afghanistan is like literally in the middle of everything. It's like it's a part of the Middle East. It's fucking right in the middle between Europe and Asia, basically. You know, it's one of those countries that's very strategically important for imperialist powers. So the Russians here, they're going into this village. They poison wells. They kill livestock. They destroy whatever fucking whatever meager infrastructure these people have. I'm not trying to insult Afghanis here when I say this, but like they're kind of living in almost the Stone Age here.
They live in like a very minimalist fashion.
Yeah, it's not even like technology wise, it's not even really up to like the Middle Ages in Europe or anything. Like it's somewhere before that kind of thing, and that's kind of a thing they've just always just kind of done. And, you know, more power to them if they don't need to fucking get past that, then that's fine. It just so happens, they have these invading armies fucking their shit up.
Yeah, how can you evolve?
Yeah. So, they destroy this entire village. They kill a bunch of people. They shoot all their livestock. Like I said, they poison their fucking wells, which is a big plot point, actually, that comes back time after time, like poisoning of water holes and stuff like that, And this tank commander, Daskell, is just a straight up fucking monster. We get a really kind of a scene that made me fucking squirm, and I'm like a horror movie fan and shit, but where they put like the one guy who seems like he's maybe connected to the rebels and defending and fighting back against the Soviet forces. He's the guy who's got like the anti-tank weapon up on the hill when the tanks come in, and he tries to shoot at one of the tanks and take it out, right? And they catch him, and they put him under the fucking tank treads and run him over. And
I had a hard time watching that.
That was fucking gross. Like, they don't show the entire thing of him being run over, but they show the start of it where the tank treads go over his feet and his feet like collapse, and that was enough.
And they showed the after when I think it was the wife.
Oh yeah. They show the after where he's just it's not even a body anymore. Like he's just like fucking crunched up like fucking jello in the dirt, basically. He's actually like he's taken the form of the tire tracks of the fucking tank, basically, right?
It's but like you said, the guy who made this or wrote this, like this is his story, or like kind of his story of what he saw. So guaranteed, this is like just the tip of the iceberg of the shit that he saw.
So like in the interview I was reading, so he talks about how the Afghanis did a ambush on a Soviet tank column. And this is something that they do to this day to even like American tank columns. The irony, the Americans helped the Mujahideen during this conflict. Like the CIA was actively trying to get arms and stuff to these people and help them, and trying in secret to help them like fuck with the Soviets at every fucking turn that they could. But, now we're at the point where it's Afghanistan is no longer so viable for our fucking interests, apparently. I say our interests, but, like fucking North American interests, basically. And now we're leaving them behind to be overthrown by another fucking bunch of shitty repressive fucks. But, and what was it saying here? Fucking...
Oh, what he witnessed attack the village.
He was with the group that attacked this fucking Soviet tank column. And what they did is they set up explosives to detonate the lead and last tank. So it blew those both up and sort of boxed the other tanks in. And then they would a bunch of them would rush the middle tanks in the column and just, assault them and take prisoners. And apparently they took a bunch of prisoners, and he was asked by sort of the Afghanis that were handling him, interview these prisoners. And so he realized that these prisoners were going to be killed, and that the longer he prolonged the interviews, the longer these people would live. And he realized the fucking reality of that situation, to the point where eventually he was asked to leave, or basically, you need to get the fuck out of here. And as he was walking away, they gunned all these people down. And so he kind of realized right there, I can't be here anymore, kind of thing. And I am in the wrong place. And, his story went from there. But yeah, everything in here is just brutal. It's fucking brutal. So you have this young guy come back to his town who becomes the new Khan, or he's looking to become the new Khan of his village, basically. And he goes on this revenge quest to take this tank down, because this tank gets separated from its column. And so they decide to hunt them down. And we have Jason Patrick as Konstantin Kovalchenko. He's the guy who's questioning Daskell's orders. And he eventually gets left behind, tied to a rock to be killed. He befriends the Afghani that's in his tank crew, right? He was the only guy who treated him with any fucking respect, and they were kind of friends. And so he learned a bit of his culture, Samad's culture, before he was gunned down and killed by Daskell, who was always suspicious of him. He's
racist.
He's a racist. Yes, he's given him dirty looks from the beginning of the movie. He's given him dirty looks in the tank.
There was nothing to lead that he had anything to do with anything, especially when the attack happened and he blamed him for the attack when it was just a bunch of fucking deers.
Yeah.
So, firstly, I'm not sure how he'd be able to communicate with the rest of the Afghanis. And secondly, like he mentioned, why would I put you guys at stake when my son's life would be at risk? That's the big thing. I know at the beginning they call him a traitor, but it's kind of obvious why he took the side, because his son is an exchange student in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just going to say this really quick before I forget. It is hilarious that none of the actors that are portraying the Russian military are Russian. They don't even have a Russian accent.
That was
just straight up American.
that was intentional too. The choice of casting Americans doing American accents was to give a more sort of direct, analogous connection to Vietnam, basically. It was trying to put you in the mindset of Americans in Vietnam. Was kind of
okay.
The idea there.
Yeah.
So it is pretty glaring. The first, I don't know, 15 minutes of the film or something like that. But after a while, you don't care anymore, right? You kind of it's all right.
It bugged me the whole way through.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah. Every time I saw Russia and anything Russian, I'm like, they're not Russian.
I mean, I was
came. Everything. I was getting angry at that. It makes more sense now.
I was going to take it over, because here's the thing: I didn't think they were ever going to hire a bunch of Russian actors for this. That's way better than me trying to hear a bunch of American actors and name American actors that people know trying to do shitty Russian accents.
I think that would have been also insulting to Russians if they it took a bunch of actors to try and do Russian. So yeah, I do get it. I totally understand. It's just me personally, it was something that did bug me.
I look at it the same way as British war movies. Whenever you see like a British war movie, especially from like the 60s and 70s, and some of the British actors are going to play Nazis.
Yeah.
The Nazis all have British accents.
Or the French are always British. That's one I always kind of laughed at too every time I watched a movie where it was made in France or the story was in France or the actors are supposed to be French and they all had English accents. And even was better was like the fake English accents to match the other people's accents. And you're like, aren't you French? So yeah, that's again one of those things that bugs me.
Yeah, it's fair.
It kind of takes you out of it. I understand in this situation it'd be a lot more difficult to kind of get Russians to do the Russian part. So I can't be as mad. And also with like budget and limit of like who and like all the kind of stuff. Because even the actors they used for like anyone from Afghanistan, if you read their backgrounds, like I think I know I read one was from Cuba, one was from Israel.
There was some Afghani brown face stuff going on, to a certain extent, but
again, limited to what you have, limited to who you know, and limited to like what casting's available. So it's not. Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, I think they did a really fucking good job because this feels like as far as like a disconnected fucking viewer, that I am, who's never seen war face to face and definitely never saw this war up front, it feels authentic. That's one of the things I like about this a lot is like it's not a bullshit action movie with a bunch of just stupid shit that doesn't make sense. Like this tank is slowly dying as they run. Like it's bleeding out oil, it's running out of fuel, it's running out of ammo, and they kind of stick to that. They keep it super realistic that way. And so it's like this desperate battle between this dying tank and this little group of dudes.
And the captain, or the leader, who is desperately trying to finish this mission with his tank. Like the pride of like trying to get it there. Because the guy is like so proud that this tank has been through everything that he refuses to accept the fact that it's dead, and which kind of led to the whole incident with the watering hole. Because when they met up with the helicopter and the helicopter was going to take him home, the pilot or the people on the helicopter would have lived had they taken the tankers with them. Yeah. Because then they could have been like, no, sorry, we poisoned that. You can't drink that water.
Yeah. This is a guy whose entire life has been war. Like he had, at one point, he talks about how he was a child in Stalingrad blowing up Nazi tanks. Like he was a guy who was lowered down to drop grenades on top of Nazi tanks and destroy them. And then he became a tanker himself in the Soviet army and did like campaigns in Mongolia and shit like that. So like his whole life has been skewered by this, and he's become basically just this fucking psychopath.
A ball of hate.
Yeah, he's just a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and so, racist piece of shit, like the Afghani tank guy here, Samad, he pays for being a super progressive in Afghani. Like he talks about how he thinks, Afghanistan needs to come into the 20th century if it's going to, get anywhere. Like if it's going to knock off the shackles of oppression from imperialism, we need to fucking progress and get out of this. And this movie doesn't go deep into it, but it touches on sort of the internal politics of Afghanistan, how like there's this push-pull between modernization and sort of more rural, religious, fundamentalist way of living. And it's weird because you can kind of see good guys on both sides of this. Like it's very shades of gray because, you have empathy for the Afghani, the rural Afghani villagers because they're just trying to live their fucking lives and they're getting rolled over literally by tanks. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you can really feel for Samad because he wants to see Afghanistan come into the modern age and be more civilized, quote unquote, and be independent. Like, he believes in the sort of communist ideals of like socialism and such. Right? Like he at least believes the lies that, you know, at the time communist government were throwing out there. Like, you know, their brand of socialism wasn't really socialism so much as it was kind of a despotism.
And he believed in the better. Like he believed.
He did. He believed on, you know, he was also still like a religious guy. Like you see that scene where he's going to pray, and, you know, Daskell tells him, you know, get the fuck up. Like, what are you doing? And there's some really good, you know, just really good small personal moments in this. I think also I should applaud this film because it does sort of highlight the Afghani women.
Yes, I wanted to bring that up too. Yeah.
Yeah. In this, you know, for better or for worse, you know, like I'm not going to sit here and say I'm as much as I kind of, empathize with the Afghanis as far as, you know, their struggle against imperialist powers. I'm never going to side with like the religious beliefs.
Yeah.
Especially because, you know, how oppressive they are to women. Like, there's a couple scenes here where the women are this shit upon. Like, initially, you know, the main woman in this, she comes up to the new guy who's, you know, he's going to be the new Khan of the village or whatever after his brother has died. And she's like, I saw it happen. He was my husband. He got run over by the fucking tank. And she has the RPG that they confiscated. And she's like, I will help you fucking hunt these people down and kill them. And then a guy from the Mujahideen, who's like a cousin of the Khan guy. And this is the eternal conflict between the Afghanis here, where it's like, there's different factions who have different ideas of what fucking Afghanis should do in this situation, even if they're still fighting the Russians. He's like, he grabs the RPG from her. It's like, give me that bitch, basically.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you see how dismissed the women are in this culture and how like talked
Even though
down
they're
they
like
are.
way more heroic than the men.
They attack a tank with stones.
They have no weapons, and they're the ones that stopped the tank. Again, they have no weapons. They have what they can find and whatever materials they can use. And in this case, they had the grenades that they found and were able to stop the tank. Like, they're the heroes in this moment because they're the ones that caused the tank to be fucked.
Yeah.
And even at the end, the lead woman, she got in trouble for killing the leader guy. For the tank.
Yeah. Daskell, yeah.
Daskell?
Yeah.
Anyways, I can never pronounce names.
It's fine.
But they're like, it's as if they got no credit for it. And when they go after them, they're shocked as the fact that they murdered somebody. Like, hold on a second. These women were in the village when it all happened. The one woman watched her husband get crushed by a tank.
Yeah.
Their entire shock at the beginning, like the one woman who's leaning against the building, and the guy gives the baby and it's like, here, you're the mother now. Like you could see how much they're in shock and how angry they are and how like they're trying to do whatever they can, but they're still kind of being ignored.
Yeah.
I think this is the reason I kind of really enjoyed this movie, was because there's a lot of like stuff you don't think of. Like, I remember after 9/11 happened, my sister had this interview or journal or news report. I can't remember what it was about, but it was a news reporter ended up in Afghanistan and was like recording the things that happened in the villages, like from all the war-torn cities and stuff. The villages. And you saw the exact same shit you saw in this movie. So like the burned skulls, the squished bodies, the like babies that have no mothers anymore, the burnt houses, the buildings being thrashed. All of that stuff was literally as if I was watching the reporter, like that movie that report that I saw as a little kid.
Yeah.
It's very similar. So you can tell this person had firsthand, like viewed these things firsthand. And in this movie, you see how strong these females are, and you see how the men are so dismissive, which again is not something you usually think of. And you don't see the women put up a fight because this is how they're just treated. It's normal. It's natural. It's kind of like what they're used to. So even though they are a big part of it, they're not treated as equals still.
You notice they are very dismissive of this bullshit male honor code that is here, because this whole idea that if your enemy asks for forgiveness, then you take him in and shit. And they're like, fuck this. This is the guy who literally drove the tank over my husband. I'm going to throw a stone at his face. Like that is their thought. And it's like, yeah, more power to you, sister. You should have killed that motherfucker, and they should have let you kill that motherfucker. But yeah, you do see it. Like I really love about this film is that they show it very clearly. That's what's happening, and that's really bad. And at the same time, they still like, this is 1981. The reality is these women are not going to be heard.
No.
And they're going to be dismissed at the end. So it shows that. But at the same time, it doesn't treat the women in the movie with any disrespect. And like it actually gives them, actual due.
It shows how much harder they have to fight. Like that was the biggest thing. It showed how fucking tough they were and how much harder they had to fight in order to be able to fight. Like they were, like you said, they attacked a tank. While all the males had ran and everyone was hiding, they ran at the tank, and the one woman literally just stayed there as they threw the.
It was like I think it was like mustard gas or something, because it was something that outright killed her.
Yeah.
So, and
she stayed to the end. Like she refused to leave. And they were all like screaming for her. And she's like, no, like I'm going to like bitter end. I'm going to fight. Yeah. And you could see the women were stronger than the men, but the women didn't have anything to be able to help them. The one thing I do have to say, you can kind of see the hatred that's built up. So in this case, you see a country. Yeah, you see a country. You see a person like from a country, and you say this person must die. As much as everything that happened, like the situation is, this guy was forced to do what he had to do. So showing him mercy actually helped because they were able to like get revenge with Constantine. Versus had they killed them, it would have been a lot more difficult.
Yeah. And
with that, it kind of shows the empathy. So I'm mixing up names now, but Taj.
Akbar Taj, yeah.
Yeah, Taj. Because other people within that group wanted to murder him as well. But he showed empathy because he's like, hold on a second. If they threw him out here to die, there must be a reason for it. And that kind of took a little more thought.
There's a little side story here of Taj like doubting whether he's worthy of being Khan. And like he's talking to his uncle, who's kind of his mentor, who's saying, you will be Khan. This is your test, basically. And Taj shows that he has intelligence, and he's got savvy, he's got empathy, and he kind of realizes like he's got more forethought than any of his compatriots do. And especially like his cousin, who's like, super mujahideen, he's wearing sunglasses the whole time. He thinks he's a fucking rock star, basically, fighting this war kind of bullshit. But Taj is like the real deal, who, could be an important leader kind of thing, who could actually like lead his people to something a bit better because he's actually smart. This movie is so impressive how intricate it is and how deep it actually is, beneath the surface, when really it's really just this chase movie between this group of fucking guerrilla fighters and this tank. At the end of the day, like it works as both that and as like a deeper kind of study into the war and the cultural differences and just the horrors of it all.
And it shows or how heavily the hate is based on the country. So at one point when all the pilots are dead because they drank the water, they said, I hate Afghanistan. Yeah. They're the ones that poisoned the water.
Yeah.
They're the assholes. It's not the Afghanis who did it. It was the Americans who did it. Or not the Americans, the Russians who did it. And it just shows it. It shows the development, like how the military makes you hate other countries in this sense. Like in this, they say if they're Afghanistan, they're bad, because then they have like that's how they show the whole all the tanks going into the village. It didn't matter that there was kids and children and wives and husbands and whatever, families just living. Nothing, like they literally had nothing that they could do against the military.
Yeah.
And they just ran through them like, this is what you're supposed to do. You hate the Afghanis, you're going to kill them.
Yeah.
And it was the same with, on the other side, with those who survived and retaliated. It was, if you're Russian, we hate you, we're going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really nice to see Taj in that moment of saying, hold on a second, this guy might actually be helpful versus go against us. Because if his own country hates him, he might be trying to help us or want to help us.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember bringing this up before with one of the other podcasts, but a big thing that a lot of countries will do is that they'll try to prevent education. Mm-hmm. So if their people are not educated, they just kind of follow along with what the government has to say and kind of like what the military has to say. So it's very brainwashed. Like you've seen the ads for the military. I've got nothing against people who are in the military. I know a lot of great people who are intelligent. That's nothing against it. It's just, you see it. It's the States. I see it a lot, not so much Canada, but it's very much be proud, be military, be whatever. It's very making you very patriotic. Mm-hmm. And not ask questions. It's just, you're going to follow these rules. We're going to tell you to do something and you're going to ask no questions. And you're really not going to have any empathy because you've never really learned that. Like it's basically taking people who have nothing and being like, hey, we're going to take you.
For the most part, like especially.
It's not as bad now, though. I don't see that as often.
I mean, especially in the last, I guess this is basically in the news now, basically, last 20, 30 years in the Middle East. What was the U.S. military doing? They're bringing in young kids, 19-year-old kids and shit like that, putting them on the front lines in like Kabul and places like that, Kandahar, whatever, and just throwing them in the shit. And how are they not going to be jaded by stuff like that when they're like emotionally immature? They're not.
Their brains are not even fully developed.
Exactly. They're technically adults by, legally, although, they still can't drink. But they're thrown into that shit. People are trying to kill them. How can they not be brainwashed into hating everything about that fucking place? Like, it takes a real empathetic, mature person to be able to, like, hold their head up above that shit and actually see, the forest from the trees kind of deal. But a lot of them don't end up doing that, and it's just good soldier, ask no questions, and just go in there and hate your enemy and not, understand the actual social and political situation that's in that country. Like, you see so many fucking videos leaked out on YouTube and stuff of young soldiers just being abusive, bullying pieces of shit to the local culture. And like, yeah, I get it. There's enemy soldiers embedded everywhere, but at the same time, they're abusing, raping, killing, murdering people.
Innocent people.
Innocent people without any due process or anything like that. They're just doing it. And
because they're told, go into this village and destroy it.
Yeah.
Here's whatever. Don't make sure there's no survivors because they might be enemies. Mm-hmm. That's what the scary part is, because even if it is somebody who his intention is not any sort of hatred, which is most of the times in like these small villages, you're just creating more hate because that's all they know. Mm-hmm. All they know is like, oh, my town can't really develop because every time we rebuild it, it gets destroyed again. And
it's like what are the kids in the town going to think? The kids that, especially, this is set in the 1980s. The kids in these fucking villages in the 1980s grow up, and all they know is that their moms, their dads, their cousins, their uncles and shit were murdered by a bunch of fucking soldiers from a different country. And so what do they know other than
hate?
We're always being attacked, and you need to hate your enemy, and they just get radicalized. Like it feels like there's no fucking way out of that shit, and it's hard to be a thing to talk about, when we're lucky enough to like live in a country where that shit doesn't really happen, especially to privileged fucking white people like us.
Oh god, yeah.
But
we're
it's
sitting in our cozy apartments, like,
yeah. And it's just a totally different world, and it's sad. These
are the movies that we need to see. These are the movies that we it needs to be brought into our lives, because we can't just live in this like pretty little box to think, oh yeah, everything's great, everything's fine. I know the fight for gay rights and women's rights are something that are constantly talked about, and the only reason we know about that is because of movies that are like these, and like media that goes out, like journalists that actually go out and like do interviews with these people. Like the one movie that we watched, that I can't remember the name of right now, that was really intense. The documentary one.
Oh, The Art of Killing, was it?
Yes, yes. Like that one like literally blew both of our minds. And it's all the stuff like that really shows us what's going on. So that's why I have this massive appreciation that this was brought to our attention. Because first of all, 1988, still relevant. Like a lot of the stuff is still relevant. And it's just an older movie that kind of got shoved under the rug because there was like bigger blockbusters that were out that were bigger and better and kind of showed we're America, we're great. Like I'm not saying that it's an American or promoting anything or anti anything American. It's just kind of shoving the bad news under the rug and bringing forth we're awesome, we're badass, military or war is awesome, like that kind of shit.
Yeah, you see, and that's interesting too because the director here, Kevin Reynolds, he did some writing too, right? Like, and he did like one of the first drafts of Red Dawn. Have you ever seen Red Dawn?
I haven't, but I have heard of it.
So Red Dawn, the way it ended up being is very gnostic, pro-American shit, and it's the Russians with the help of like Cubans and stuff fucking invade America and take it over and and shit like that. And so you got these like a little group of American kids basically who, the local fucking jocks and shit in a small American town become the rebels. They fight, behind enemy lines, trying to take out Russian targets and stuff like that. And like the original concept of that was to make it more actually like this movie, where it's like much more about the consequences of war, much more how unprepared, much more, civilized, quote unquote, fucking laid back, relaxed, safe countries are not prepared for actual war as compared to like say Europeans and Middle Eastern people and stuff like that who've had nothing but war throughout the centuries in their fucking cultures and their history. So this movie does a fucking great job of both being kind of a tense psychological kind of action movie with like this chase, but at the same time, like really hitting on some great points and highlighting stuff that you would not see highlighted anywhere else in the 1980s, basically.
Yeah. It also just showed like what happens when these people have their backs against the walls, like what they're going to do. Because how can you feel hate towards people who just watched their village get destroyed and now they're going after them? Like, I don't even understand. I would be furious. Like, I can totally understand. Like, I can totally justify their actions, especially since like the women had rocks. That's what they used as their weapon, is rocks. That's all they had.
It's funny. They use smaller rocks against the tank earlier on, and when they finally do disable the tank, basically, is when they use grenades to bring down bigger rocks on the actual tank, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, when you saw the rocks coming and you see the women, you're like, yeah, bitch. And you knew it was you ladies. It rocked. It was okay. So besides the whole story, I don't want to forget to bring this up. I honestly think also the cinematography was pretty good in this one too. For being very basic, I found one. It was very easy. Like, it's a very easy scenery to get lost in, like disoriented in, but you didn't feel that way. So the way they did the camera and the angles and all that stuff and the intense moments, I think was brilliantly done. It really kind of gave you that, like the scenery itself kind of gave you this hopelessness. So every time something happened, whether it was on the Russian side or the Afghan side, there was always these moments of just complete helplessness and hopelessness. And it was emphasized by this desert, like just how they used it and how they did it. And the same with just showing the angles and just showing the space, like how vast and lost you get. Again, it's just something that's so simple, but easily could have made this movie look like kind of cheesy and bad. But because it was really well done, it was very captivating. Like it was very good.
It is extremely cinematic as well. You're right. This was mostly shot in Israel, by the way, and so like all the sort of like Soviet equipment and stuff you see is actually kind of like stuff that the Israelis actually had, basically. So I think we kind of said all we kind of need to say about the film as far as like our praise of it. Unless you have anything else to say, like
I have one more thing I want to say.
Okay.
All I want to mention is that you could totally tell it was like a late 80s, early 90s movie because of the music. Like,
yeah, it's very it's very synth heavy.
Like the trailer. As soon as you play the trailer, there was one part with the music. I was like, oh god, that just dates it right there.
It does.
Like, that is like iconic then. Like that is like literally 80s and early 90s. Like you're just like, oh yeah, I recognize that music.
This I like 80s like synth soundtracks, but at the same time I especially like them when they're like the very top tier ones like Vangelis and Tangerine Dream, and this is not Vangelis or Tangerine Dream, but it's still pretty good. But it is something. It's actually the thing that kind of dates the movie more than anything else. I do agree. But yeah, I think we both give highest recommendations for this film. This is going to be in my best of the year list when we do that at the end of the year, because this is really fucking good. So again, thanks Nick for suggesting this one. This was a pleasant surprise, as disturbing as the subject matter is.
We need to be exposed to these movies though. Like these are the ones that people should watch. Like they're heavy to watch, they're hard to watch, but absolutely it's a slap in the face. Like it's a reality check. Like everyone's talking about being fucking woke nowadays because of like vaccines and shit. No, watch this kind of shit. Like don't fall into like misinformation. Fall into like actual shit that really affects the world.
Yeah. So just 2 trivia points here I'll get into. So the tank used in the film is an authentic Soviet T-55 captured by the Israeli Defense Forces during the Arab-Israeli conflicts. Although it was modified by the Israelis and redesignated as a TI-67 and fitted with a 105 millimeter main gun in place of the original 100 millimeter gun. The film's military advisor Dale Dye said that he negotiated the purchase of the tanks over drinks with Israeli Defense Force officers in a Tel Aviv hotel. So yeah. The fire commands and terminology used by the tank crew in combat are the same as used by U.S. Army tank crews. This was to add military flavor to the movie and give it a very realistic feel. The Hungarian version of the movie corrected much of these errors and added authentic Warsaw Pact jargon and commands. So it would be much more, the Soviet side of things. Interestingly, the tank commander repeatedly calls shrapnel shells Kartaks, which is an outdated word for grape shot. And like there is talk of like the different rounds they use. So like they got like heat rounds and they got fucking frag rounds, and that would be like the grape shot, I guess. Rounds would be the frag rounds used for shooting at actual people. Budget for this was $8 million. Box office was $161,004, and that just goes to show you that they buried this. Like this movie had no fucking chance. They released it in 2 theaters for a limited run, and they just wrote this off. They're like, okay, we got the money to write this off, I guess, so we're just going to do it.
It's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate, because I think this movie actually probably would have done... it might have not made back its $8 million budget, but I think it probably would have done fairly well, because it's just actually a legit, really good fucking movie. And, I mean, it's no Rambo 3, where it's Rambo, like... sucking the dick of the Afghani fighters and like America, yeah, but it's it's
America, fuck yeah.
Exactly. That's what Rambo 3 is. America, fuck yeah. Releases for this, there's some DVD releases. I don't think there's a Blu-ray out there. It's on iTunes, Google Play, Microsoft Play, Amazon Prime, Vudu, and Movies Anywhere. And there's some illicit sources as well that you can find it on. The source we used is like the player is in Farsi, and I could not find a way to like get the text to English on the Farsi player. So, but thankfully the subtitles were still in English. So,
yeah. So, just as a heads up to anybody watching this is not the movie. There's no movie at the end of this.
Exactly. No, I mean, although we should have told them beforehand.
I just thought of it now.
They're good. They're gonna get to this point like, when's the movie gonna start? What the fuck's happened?
You know, you have the warning at the beginning. That's literally what you need to have now. Is this is not the movie. This is a podcast. Mm-hmm. This is going to have no video. It's literally voices. So unless you want us to do the voice acting of like the whole movie, you're not getting the movie here. I'm actually seriously considering making that for the YouTube version of this fucking podcast, putting it in, because I fucking know there's going to be people who are still going to complain. They're going to press play. The first thing that's going to tell them is, this is a podcast. The movie is not here. You need to go buy the movie or rent it or find it in some other place other than YouTube where I will not get a copyright strike because I tried to upload the fucking movie, you fucking dumb fucks. And they're still going to complain, where's the movie? You know it's going to fucking happen. Well, as soon as they're gonna click on it and they're just gonna like fast forward through it to see, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh, this is not the movie." Yeah, I'm making fun of all you fuckers out there. Oh fuck. So next weekend we're not gonna be doing a podcast because I'm gonna be working. How dare you? I know. It's gonna be a busy week for me work wise next week. So and I don't even work next Saturday. Damn it! It's like the first time I have a Saturday off in like. Oh, I don't even know how long since the restaurant opened again. I guess you're going to hang out. I guess you're going to have to hang out with our other friends. That's going to be lame. Oh, my God. Do I know other people? I don't know. I mean, I technically I should be off at 4 a.m. Saturday night, so we should still be able to like have some hangout time. But people don't need to know about that. Why are we telling us our personal business on a fucking podcast? I do have an idea for what our next episode is going to be. I need to get in contact with our friend Vaughn, who was on our Jabberwocky episode, because I think we're going to make that happen. He wanted to be on an episode for this movie that we're going to do. So, was it by being surprised? No, I'm not going to surprise anybody. Actually, I'm just going to say the next episode is tentatively it's going to be Siege, which is a Canadian-made movie from the 1980s, early 1980s, which is a exploitation movie that's set in my home province of Nova Scotia. It was during the Halifax police strike, and it's basically set during that time. It actually has the only known news footage that still remains of covering that strike in the opening to sort of set the tone of the movie, and it goes some interesting places. It's a fun movie, so we probably going to do that, and look for that in like 2 weeks. Yeah. So Lady Lee, where can people find you on the interwebs? You got anything you need to plug or anything like that? So I am now trying to stay up to date again. It's going to fall again, but whatever. At the moment, if you want any updates of when we are, or when the new podcasts come out, check me out on Instagram at Mighty Tiny All Star. Mm-hmm. So whenever we have any of the podcasts come out, I will post. And there's a link on my profile. Go check it there, and all that jazz. Yeah. And you can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find our Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube links. Go to the Facebook group, join that. And that's kind of the best place to find out what's coming up on the podcast and, interact with us, give us a movie request that we'll do like 3 years down the road, like we did this one tonight. It's we'll do better. Yeah. We'll do better. I mean, I can't promise that. We will do better. I'm just going to yell at you now. I'm just going to ask you every weekend, be like, do we have any requests that we need to do first? All right. So, yeah, Lee's going to check me now. She's going to keep me on the ball, I guess.
we'll see what happens. That might work out to our benefit, or it just might fall apart. We'll but but yeah, thank you, Lee, for joining me, and thank you all for listening. We love you all, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to Cape Shit. That's not the right one.
You are humble.
That's not the right one either. Okay, I'm just ending it.
Слева, и я должен там сесть. Не пойму, почему мне так холодно здесь. Я не знаком с соседом, хоть мы вместе год, и мы тонем. Хотя каждый знает, где брод, и каждый с надеждой глядит в потолок троллейбуса, который идет на восток. Троллейбуса, который идет на восток. Троллейбуса, который... Братья, мы 7-я вода, и мы едем. Не знаю, зачем и куда мой сосед не может. Хочет уйти, но не может уйти. Он не знает пути. И вот мы гадаем, какой может быть прок в троллейбусе, который идет на восток. Троллейбусе, который идет на восток. Троллейбусе, который... Нет шофера, но троллейбус идет, и мотор заржавел, но мы едем вперед. Мы сидим, не дыша, смотрим туда, где на долю секунды показалась звезда. Мы молчим, но мы знаем, нам потом помог троллейбус, который идет на восток. Троллейбус, который идет на восток. Троллейбус, который...
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For further episodes, our Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube links, please go to tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.